the boarding stores because there was a conflict. The question that you asked earlier on, there was a conflict between the elders and the youth. The youth were surprisingly at a point where they thought the system had to be pushed away, and the elders were subservient. They had accepted their fate that they are oppressed people and that they can't do anything about the system. So when the shootings happened and the children started fighting the system, the children said, no, our parents go every weekend, they sit at the bottle stores, because there used to be public places where black people were allowed to sit and drink, owned by the city council, owned by the government. So the youth went to those places and they burnt them down. They even went and burnt now within the community the houses of the policemen and the councillors, people who were serving the system. So what happened then, the 1976 generation then left. Many of them were taken outside the country by the underground structures of the liberation movement, particularly the leadership of the student movement of the time. Then they took them through intensive training, including not just military training, but political training, but also how to mobilize in the communities, because they're preparing them to come back and organize their communities. So when they came back here, some of us were now in our early teens. We were doing around grade 6, grade what? Grade 8. Then this 1976 generation, highly politicized and highly trained, very sophisticated, because they had been received by many countries who sympathized with us, with our struggle. Then came back and identified, as Fred was saying, many amongst ourselves who had the potential to take the struggle forward as young people. But you know, with the tragedy of apartheid, which I think is something that has not been told, particularly with the 76 and the 80s generation, particularly 1985 towards 1990, is that young people of your age were thrust. In fact, this conflict between the young people and the elders didn't just stop in the 70s. There were many things that were done. There were people, elderly people who were hired to come and attack students. They came from hostels in the 70s already. Hostel compounds where mainly males would stay. But then in the 80s, young people had to assume ownership of leading their communities. Literally, you would have 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds running communities. Utumsane would tell you, there's a point at which when the president of the ANC, President Oliver Tambo, issued a call from outside the country and said we must render the system of apartheid unworkable and render the country ungovernable, which meant that we must not recognize the apartheid government. Us, the youth at the time, in our communities, were charged with the responsibility of establishing street committees so that we establish parallel structures which effectively are going to continue to run the country, whilst the state, the apartheid state, says it is running the country. So if someone attacked somebody in the community and stabbed them, we would say, no, this matter must not go to, it must not go to the court. Even if the police come and arrest you, we know that because you're harassing the community, and it's a black community, they will release you on bail and you will come back. Or sometimes some people will just come back under mysterious circumstances. So there would be so-called kangaroo courts run by the community, where you will be tried and then a sentence is passed and then you're going to get 25 lashes. But what that meant was that we're charged with the responsibility of preparing to run our country, so that by the time we're free, we have a sense of what it is to govern ourselves, a people's government. So it meant that, therefore, during the day, an 18-year-old would be a student leader. You would be a student leader by day, In the afternoon, you go and attend a youth meeting. You are a youth leader. Around 6:30 in the evening, then there's a community meeting that's going to talk about community issues, including civic issues. And you're part of that meeting where we're complaining about the fact that the apartheid government is not servicing our people. They were not getting proper water and refuse removal and all of that. And a rainbow court was then initiated. As the night proceeds, this 18-year-old now becomes a fighter, an underground fighter. He will now train by the generation to which Dumisani belongs. You are trained, you are taken through a process where you are told how to conduct yourself in your community, but also to be vigilant, to look out for strange people within your community, people who might be sent by the apartheid system. But more than that, some of you then are taken through training for armed action so that you defend your own community. But that was highly secretive. I just wanted to outline. So what you're talking about is not just a group of young people who are running in the streets. You're talking about young people who, at a face value, they were running and they were shot at, but there was this thing that, this organized system that Frank spoke about, that received you as soon as you became highly politicized, and then told you how to conduct yourself. Some people who would be prominent student leaders were given orders to resign from those leadership positions in preparation for underground political work. So that, because if you're popular and you do underground political work, it compromises that. One compromises the other. So those are some of the things that happened. It's part of. I hope I have not taken much time.
Maybe one other point that we must emphasize is that we were not hooligans, we were not thugs. In fact, the apartheid system used to pay some of our brothers, it organized gangsters to come and attack us. Any organized unit within the community would be attacked by other young people who did not subscribe to what we were doing. You had enemies inside your house when you were a political activist, a student activist. Inside your own house, you had enemies, and you had to operate at the highest level, occupy a moral high ground, which was not easy. We have a set of values that were very different because we were not criminals. We couldn't be seen organizing criminal activity. In as much as we had to sabotage the system, there had to be an objective. Now, when there is a strike by the railway workers, we would sabotage the system, organize a march, get into the trains, bang them down. We had to bring down the economy that was servicing the apartheid government. So from time to time, you had a language of targets. There were targets that we had to hit. Now, these targets, how are they selected? Because if you are a group of hooligans, you don't know how these targets are selected. But if you are organized in a particular form, you know how these targets are selected. You wouldn't be seen after hitting a target. Let's say South African breweries, largely they sell alcohol, beers. Then you are the one who's drinking those beers. That's counter-revolution. Now, in as much as you short-circuit the apartheid economy, you also do not turn your people into drunkards who become future buyers of an economy that you are trying to bring down. People like Maponya would have been very, very key and instrumental for our boycotts, because when we encourage a consumer boycott against white monopoly capital, we had to redirect our people to places where they could buy. And we understood the biggest mission that we had to attain, which was the total seizure of power from apartheid government and the transfer of power to a people's government. Now, that's very high level. It's not like it's something that you can play with. And that is why even today we are still activists. It's precisely because we have to make our contribution in relation to ensuring that we safeguard the interests of our people and ensuring that government continues to build lives of our people which were destroyed really, deliberately so, by an apartheid government that did not care. I mean, even the type of education that we received, it was better for us to belong to student political organizations which were linked to the underground structure of the ANC, and that is why we know so much. Even how we behave today, it's better than any other person who would not have been our member at any given point. I mean, children today, many of them don't go to libraries. But it becomes important for us here and there through our activism to educate society. The importance of going to school, reading, understanding your own history. Going to a school where you use your own language to learn, because people have been taught that going to a white school and learning in English is the best thing, whereas you are African. And now we wonder why we have few engineers and accountants. It's because many of the people who go to school do not have confidence to actually challenge those things. It's actually children from townships and rural areas who are still taught in their languages, who in actual fact become engineers, accountants, they become maths teachers and so on, because they have the confidence and they understand where they come from. And that is part of the broader struggle that people undermine even today and they don't understand properly. But it's important that all of us, not only those from your institute in Alabama, even here in South Africa, we should be able to learn our history, not being in a hurry, with the understanding that we must build a global movement of those in Africa and in the diaspora, of ensuring that Africans in particular and black people in general are also able to be, are also recognized for the contributions that they have made in the entire world. And that's why we're still activists, that's why we're here. We live modest lives, despite whatever that we have gone through.
Ma'am, did you wish to speak?
Yeah, I was slightly touched when the gentleman was talking. I don't know, it's Mr. When he was talking. Okay, I just wanted to add, or maybe to highlight some of the important points that happened. Okay, fine, the 1976 leaders and the students, they worked very, very hard, to be honest. They contributed a lot. But now when they left the country, around the 80s, the 80 generation, let me just talk about the 80 generation, that's where we came up. During 76, I was very, very young. I think I was around 6 or 7 years old. Yeah, I was 6 or 7. I remember those, we used to call them flying machines, aeroplanes, flying all over, because I was staying not far from Morris Isaacson. I was just staying 3 streets away from here. But now what I wanted to add more, it's about the 80 generation. That's where I come in. Remember, ANC was banned during the 1976. Now we had to come up again with another organization that has to come and put us together, to continue with the struggle. So now, okay, it went on and on like that. I'm not going to get more into facts, just to give you a picture of what happened. So there came the UDF, which I was part of the formation of it. We went to Cape Town in Marshall's Bay, and then we built up that UDF. And then coming back from the UDF, it was part of the ANC, and it was an organization which was very, very strong. I think